Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
There's no, I can't even reach the floor, can I? There we go. There's some water if we need it. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Quick plug-in for the book. So, which is Onward by Howard Schultz. Congratulations on that. You also run a great coffee business. You've changed the way people get their coffee and the quality of coffee the whole country over, if not the whole world. It's certainly a lot easier. When I graduated from college, I gave myself a promise. I made myself a promise that I would not drink any more instant coffee, no matter how hard up I got. I would have holes in my socks, didn't matter, holes in my shoes. I would not drink instant coffee. You made that easier, and then you came out with instant coffee. So, what up with that? We'll get to all those other things that you talked about, but I mean, that sort of, I was like, oh my goodness. And you know what was even stranger to me is that it seems to have worked. I mean, I haven't been drinking any, but someone has.
Well, first off, Duncan, thank you so much for the warm introduction. I really appreciate that. I think the instant coffee is a great proof source and very emblematic of what we all need to do. I think marketing today is very, very different because of the changes in the rules of engagement. And I think all of us need to be entrepreneurial and have the curiosity to see around corners and then have the courage when we see something or anticipate something to execute and make a big bet. We identified literally a $24 billion category that had not had any innovation to speak of in over 50 years, dominated by one great company, Nestle. And I think when we decided to go into instant coffee, we knew that the world, the consumer, the media, and certainly the investors were going to just stampede us to death because this was a desperate move. And this was at the time when we were literally turning the company around. But to identify a $24 billion category within your core business that we knew we could reinvent, not based on marketing or PR, but most importantly, the proof would be in the cup. And once we cracked the code on quality, we knew instantaneously that we had a big business. VIA will be $1 billion business for Starbucks in a few years. And it's been totally incremental, and I think it demonstrated to the entire organization the push towards reinvention, innovation, and having the courage to make a big bet. I think the lesson here is if it did not work, what would we have lost? We would have lost very little. And I think we would have had the foresight to fail fast and move on to something else. But I think we really understood the category. It was within our core business, and I think our people, perhaps more than any other consumer brand that perhaps is represented here, our people are the guiding force for whether or not something is going to succeed or fail at Starbucks. The average sale at Starbucks is $5. We'll do about $12 billion in revenue this year. The Starbucks person behind the counter is the brand. Quintessentially, we have become the kind of company that has been defined by the experience in our stores. If our people embrace and accept something, 99% of the time it's going to work. If they reject it because it doesn't pass the quality, the integrity, or the guardrails of the brand, it's going to fail. And I think once we were able to convince them that the coffee in the cup passed the test and was as good as brewed coffee at Starbucks, we knew we had a winner. And you had to overcome that Nescafe problem, which is the thing that I was trying to avoid when I graduated. I have tried it. One of the things that you have done as sort of raise this not sort of, but definitely raise the level of quality of coffee that is easily available to most people. But you've also got a lot of competitors who are also doing the same thing. So what's next? I mean, other people have sort of caught up in a way. You're seeing a lot of other quality coffees out there. They've not gone instant yet. Maybe they will. What are you doing to stay ahead, being in the lines of what you were talking about before, which is to try and sort of break what you've done and sort of reinvent and keep ahead? Well, I think the temptation is always to try and do something next that perhaps is different than the core business. Starbucks is not in the fashion business. Listening to Angela and talk about her business, Perhaps the principles are the same in terms of the integrity and quality and values-based business, but we're in a business that's been pretty much the same for 40 years. We're in the coffee business. And if we lose sight of that, and once we did, it can be quite dilutive to the purpose. So the guiding principle of Starbucks 40 years ago and today is the same. And that is, the business model of Starbucks is to try and achieve the fragile balance between profitability and a social conscience. How do we do that? First and foremost, do everything we can to exceed the expectations of our customers, but we cannot exceed the expectations of our customers as leaders or managers unless we are 100% committed to exceeding the expectations of our people. Starbucks was the first company in America to give comprehensive health insurance to every employee and equity in the form of stock options. That health insurance benefit this year is $261 million alone. The temptation over the last few years during the cataclysmic financial crisis was at a minimum to cut that benefit, let alone the pressure from the investor community to cut it out completely. If we would have done that, we would have completely fractured the trust and confidence of the values and the foundational culture of the company. And so the innovation of the company on a go-forward basis is to make sure that it's threaded into the history and the tradition of what we do. The experience at Starbucks, the sense of community, the third place, is universally accepted now in 57 countries because what we have created is no longer Western. People from all over the world want the same thing. Employees want to be valued and respected, and the customer wants to feel as if you're not reaching into their wallet and taking money, but you're touching their heart and their conscience in a way in which they really feel valued. And I think that is the model of the company. If you look at the stores today and you look at them 10 years ago, the designs have changed, the soft seating has changed, but the products, by and large, are the same. And we do have a lot of competition with coffee stores all over the world, across the street from Starbucks. We've just completed, on the backdrop of perhaps the worst economy we've seen since 2008, our strongest year in our history. And the reason for that is because of the trust and confidence in the experience and the relationship we have with our people.
Today we got an announcement that another company with a very strong brand was bringing out a new product. It was the latest iteration of the iPhone from Apple.
Yes.
That looks like they're going to sell even more of these things, and it's going to be everywhere. How are you, when you're everywhere as well, how do you keep your stores sexy? Because that's the one thing that, that's a great, I mean, Apple, they have sexy products, people like them, you know, get an iPhone, get a date. Starbucks, when are you going to be like, you know, how are you going to keep it sexy?
Well, I think ubiquity can be a real Achilles heel to a company, and certainly a company like Starbucks. I think the challenge for Starbucks is we never intended and do not want to become cool or faddish. We want to be relevant, and we want to stay relevant. Ubiquity means that the store across the street or the store that is in close proximity to another one has to have a different characteristic, a different feeling, and has to be as relevant to that local neighborhood or that local street, but different than the one across the street from it. We open up new stores because the lines get so long, and we're in the business to satisfy our customers. But I wonder if I can shift a little bit and just
absolutely.
Okay?
Yes, absolutely. I have something in my pocket that you gave me.
Yeah.
If it's not fallen down to the
But
very bottom of the pocket.
Okay.
This thing. You gave me this thing, and it looks like a very short bungee cord for bungee jumping, right? Yeah. And you're going to talk about this because it's something you not want me to go bungee jumping with. Say it's too short.
This is a symbol of something, and I wonder if I could use my time with you to not preach, but have a conversation with you about the deep level of concern I have about what's going on in our country. If we look back on the last 4 or 5 weeks, and you think about the debt ceiling crisis, and the lack of cohesion, the lack of cooperation, and the result we got, and then the S&P downgrade on America's debt, one could conclude that it was because of the balance sheet of America. But in fact, the downgrade is really about the dysfunctionality in Washington and the lack of confidence that the rating agency has in our political process, and most importantly, the political leadership and political courage and will to manage the significant problems that we have effectively. The crisis of the debt ceiling produced a crisis of confidence in America and now around the world. And the question for all of us is, what does that mean for our respective businesses, and what is our responsibility? As we sit here today, there is 9.1% unemployment. 42 out of 50 states in America are facing a budget deficit. 11 states are in peril and may not be able to make pension payments between now and the end of the year. California is $61 billion in debt. Illinois is $30 billion in debt. A half mile from here, or a mile from here, the last 2 days we've seen people literally handcuff themselves to the Brooklyn Bridge. Why? One of the reasons is that the states, as a result of the federal deficit and the pressure on revenue, are facing their own significant shortfalls. And we saw that 2 months ago in Wisconsin and Ohio. But ladies and gentlemen, what's coming in America, and I am literally the most optimistic person that any one of you have ever met. What's coming in America is unbelievable cuts in social services that are going to sweep across the country and have a devastating effect on the basic needs of people who need it the most. The result's going to be a widening gap, the likes of which we have never seen in our lifetime, between the haves and the have-nots. And the unintended consequences of that, literally, as Mayor Bloomberg said 2 weeks ago, and I've said for months privately, could be social unrest. And if you think the Brooklyn Bridge issue is just a blip on the screen, let me tell you it's not. So the question is, what is our responsibility as business leaders and as marketers? The first thing is, Washington is not delivering on the promise they made when they took an oath of office to represent all of us. Ideology, re-election, is the lens in which every single decision is being made. And as a result of that, not only do we have gridlock and partisan politics, we have something worse. We have polarization, anger, divisiveness, and a lack of empathy and the understanding that this is no longer a crisis. We are heading to a collision course with time, and it's an emergency. Businesses across the country have an obligation, in my view, not to wait for Washington. And the question is, what can we do and what should we do? The lifeblood of America has always been employment. You talk to people who have been unemployed for 9 months, a year, 16 months, the level of self-esteem, the level of concern, not to mention the inability to take care of their families. Banks are flushed with more cash today than they were pre-TARP, and they're not lending. Public companies in America are sitting with more than $2 trillion of cash, and they're not investing it. Public companies that have money offshore are sitting with $3 trillion and not bringing it back because of a 35% tax. We need a major level of reform, and we're not going to get it in time.
Can I interrupt you for a moment? Because I know you've got a lot of passion here. And
I know you want to interview me, but
I want to hear more we're heading for a crisis.
Yeah.
That may not that be a good thing, because a crisis would push Congress into actually doing something the right thing. When there is no crisis, there's no impetus to actually change anything. If things are working or we're getting by, that's the way a lot of business works. It is true. You've been in business, you know that. I've been in business, I know that. If it's sort of working, you don't want to do anything. When everything hits the fan, that's when you make some changes that you've been meaning to make for a while. If we aren't heading for a crisis, aren't we also heading for a solution too?
We are in a crisis. We're heading to an emergency. And from the looks of things, the Congress and the presidential election are going to trump every situation that is going to be, and as a result, going to be delayed for the next 14 months, because no one is going to make a decision that in effect could in any way fracture their ability to be reelected. The issue in front of us right now, if I could just finish, then I'll
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
is the responsibility that we have. And the responsibility is we must convince the business leaders of America to understand that we can be a catalyst for positive reaffirmation of the economy and job creation. We must demonstrate optimism and invest in the economy and hire people. What we did yesterday at Starbucks, and this is just one initiative that could be thousands of things that you and your companies could be doing across the country, many different things, is we said, what's the number one issue? The number one issue is we must get people working again. We must upgrade the self-esteem of the country and understand that there's a fracturing of the humanity of America as a result of unemployment. This bracelet, which we will introduce November 1st, will be sold for $5 or any donation above $5 at Starbucks. We will sell millions of bracelets and raise tens of millions of dollars. We will then funnel the money to an organization called the Opportunity Finance Network, and through their network of microfinancing and community-based businesses and loans, create an unbelievable web of being able to create access to credit across the country and very quickly create jobs. These are the kind of programs that have nothing to do with coffee, nothing to do with our core business. But what I've learned in the last couple of years is that the consumer today wants to make buying decisions not only on what a product costs or the convenience of your location, but they will make buying decisions based on the values that you and your company have. And they will support companies whose values are like-minded and compatible with their own. And those companies that will stand up on the side of the people and help America and demonstrate a passionate commitment to understanding that we have a responsibility beyond the government and we can't wait for the government will win. And it's also about preserving the relationship with your employees and creating an aspirational relationship with them that's showing them that we care for something beyond just making a profit. And in fact, you will make more money as a result of doing the right thing.
Very noble. Very noble. Very noble. And I'm sure you will sell millions of those. But didn't we, the American people, put in $700 billion into the banks under the threat that if we didn't, they wouldn't lend?
Correct.
Aren't we owed that they lend?
The money's been paid back.
I know, but
So
the quid pro quo was we bail you out as the American people, you lend. Where's the lending?
The lending isn't there, and I think the bigger issue is the lack of truth-telling in America.
Do you think Bank of America did the right thing when you're talking about values and stuff, when they turned around and said we're going to charge $5?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No question.
No question.
No question.
Absolutely not.
But
They did the wrong thing. Are they going to suffer because of that?
I think, yes, they will.
Okay.
They will. You know, but I'm not here to either criticize the president or one party or the other or criticize a company. What I'm here to say is that, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading in the wrong direction. And whether you're a Republican or Democrat, I guarantee you it's not going to be fixed between now and the next 14 months. Trust me on that.
So on the point that you want American businesses to go out, hire people, and get down to the business of business, I'm being told by people I talk to that not only is Europe going to go into a deep recession next year, but the US is going into another recession starting right about now.
I don't believe that.
Well, that's what the Economic Cycle Research Institute says, and I'm glad you don't, because you are an optimistic person, and it's great to meet somebody who's optimistic. They call it a dismal science for a reason, but that's what people are saying. That's what smart people. Obviously, you're not. Smart people are saying.
I'm not smart.
Other smart people are saying, you're smart too, are saying we're going into recession. So how can you then say to businesses, well, hire anyway?
I'm not saying hire anyway for the purpose of hiring people. I'm saying to understand that there are investment opportunities across the country in which people are sitting on the bubble because of the level of uncertainty and the direction of the country. We can't allow Washington or the politicians of this country to define the destiny of this nation. Business leaders across the country have the power and need to have the will and the courage to invest in your company and in the country. And do it now before the next 14 months when we will be in a situation where it might be too late.
Do you see any obvious areas where investment should be made? Do you look at the economy as a whole and you say, well, wow, there's a great opportunity there, that's where such and such a company should be investing? Do you see that?
I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think if I was going to start a business today, the category that I would start a business in is in health and wellness. No question. Big, big opportunity, a lot of runway, not a lot of players that are doing much that I think is...
When you say health and wellness, would you kind of focus that down a little bit?
I think the country wants to get healthier. People want to live a healthier life. There's not a lot of navigational tools. If you walk into Whole Foods, it's crowded and busy because they're offering wonderful product, but it's very tough and very confusing to navigate also, that if you're a lay person.
I call it whole paycheck foods.
Do you?
I mean, they do get a good price for their product. But so you think there could be?
I think there's a big opportunity within health and wellness.
Okay. Anywhere else you see?
That's all I'm going to give away today.
All you're going to give all he's giving away. Actually, there is something else you're giving away. Maybe not today. You're giving away a store, aren't you?
Yes.
The store.
Yeah.
Just one store. But tell us what.
If I keep telling these stories, you're going to think that I'm not a capitalist. And there's no question that I am a capitalist, and Starbucks is a for-profit business. But I do feel strongly that we have an overriding responsibility right now because of the landscape and what's going on. I spent the day today in Harlem, and we're going to go back there tonight at an event at the Red Rooster, where we announced that as a result of the cuts that are coming to underserved communities, we're going to start giving away stores. And we gave away a store this morning in Harlem on 125th and Lenox, and we're going to give another one in the Crenshaw in South Central LA. We're not doing that because we're better than anyone in this room, and we're not doing that for marketing or PR purposes. We're doing that because we recognize that we have a responsibility not only to make a profit, but we have a responsibility to give back to the communities we serve. There are heroic people in this country saving lives every day, and their ability to sustain their endeavor is going to be in question as a result of the significant social services cuts that's coming as a result of the cuts in state budgets.
Okay. We'd like to now open the conversation up to questions from the audience.
And I said that without moving my lips, too. So, whoever's got the mic. Lady down here, the mic is coming over.
Hello.
Giving away a store, that's great.
Laura Gross from Muriel Siebert & Company. I wanted to stand up and cheer. I agree with you that the problem facing this country is that there is a jobs crisis, and it's headed for an emergency. So I'd like to know what it would take for you to run for president.
That's not why I'm doing this, and
that's obvious.
Yeah, I'll leave that to others. I think I can do and make a bigger difference with the platform I have, and the last couple of weeks I've been pretty outspoken and pretty active in trying to leverage the platform I have. I also think it's a time in America where companies and company executives need to be heard. What has bothered me in the last couple of weeks is that most people do not want to step out of their comfort zone for fear of either retribution or concern, and that's what's gotten us in trouble in the past. I wonder if I appreciate the question. I wonder if I can just make one more point. On national TV this morning, I brought something up that is quite controversial, but I think it's emblematic and an interesting example. In 1945, 46, and 47, we saw the most unbelievable level of political courage and will with the development and execution of the Marshall Plan. And the backdrop of the Marshall Plan, if you can think about it, is that on the heels of being in the most terrible war, where we lost tens of thousands of young Americans, Harry Truman and Secretary Marshall was able to convince a Republican Congress and America that despite the loss of lives, we were going to use our tax dollars and our revenue base to rebuild all of Europe and to rebuild Germany. And just think of the unbelievable pressure and will it took and cooperation to get that done. Now, rhetorically, there's no one in this room who could possibly believe that in today's world we could get anything like that through this divisive, ideological institution in which you need 61 votes in the Senate to get anything done, let alone a bipartisan resolution. I would submit, and I said this on national TV this morning, this is a time in America where we need the analog for the Marshall Plan for America. And we have to stop investing, and I'm not an isolationist, we have to stop investing and fighting other people's battle and recognize that America's foreign policy has always been linked to the strength and foundation of the domestic agenda. And our domestic agenda right now is a fracturing foundation that is in turmoil and going south.
So how can other companies in this room and around the country join with you? Perhaps we're a service company. We can't sell bracelets.
Sure.
What can we do?
I can't answer that in specificity, but we're going to set up, we're in the process of setting up a website to understand how different companies, how their assets and their complementary skill base can be linked to what it is we're trying to do. And we're not trying to hold every idea ourselves. This is not about Starbucks. This is about the American people. And there will be an opportunity where we will create a digital version of what we're doing in our stores and see how we can invite other people in.
Okay. Next question, lady here.
How has the business community been responding to your entreaties to sort of
Yeah.
get the program and, take control of the situation?
Let me repeat,
Okay.
or can you just repeat that so we got it on
How
tape?
has, your community peers, the business community, essentially responded to your entreaties to get with the program and step up and show the leadership that we need?
We have about 150 like-minded business leaders and CEOs who have signed the original pledge, a combination of Democrats and Republicans. We now have pivoted off that and now gone to this job creation opportunity. We had 137,000 people call in across the country, mostly people I've never met, to the town hall webcast that we had. Thank you. And I can sense that there's going to be more and more interest. And all I'm trying to do is galvanize leaders across corporate America to understand that we have to stand up, be heard, and do something. And I think there'll be more and more people who are willing to do something as a result of what we're all looking at. Jeff? Oh.
There you go. Guy with his hand up, waiting for the mic, who's apparently called Jeff.
Thank you. Howard, you spoke a lot about how Starbucks is using the area of jobs to fulfill its mission of balancing social consciousness with profits. Another area that Starbucks seems to be heavily involved in is education. Can you talk to us a little bit about its investment in that area?
Over the course of the last year, well, I think first off, I think all of us understand that the public education system in America is just, I feel like all I'm talking about is a lot of bad news here.
You said you were an optimist a moment ago.
I am an optimist. I'm making myself depressed, though. The public education system in America is really another example of how we have fallen so far behind. So we have created a national network of partners in neighborhoods in which we are trying to, again, to use our scale for good and identify what we have called within our company change makers and literally invest in these people in their communities. The best example I can think of is someone who's become very famous in New York, and that's Jeffrey Canada at the Harlem Children's Zone. That's an example of identifying someone who has made a significant difference, who has metrics that can demonstrate success. We want to identify those people, invest in them, and we're doing the same thing in Los Angeles with Blair Taylor, the president of the LA Urban League. And we're looking across the country for these kinds of people in which the Starbucks Foundation and profits from our store can be linked back into the community.
Supplementary on that, if you can do that, why can't the government?
You know, that's the big question. The government is in a situation where There's no big ideas. It's incrementality. It's a lot of divisiveness. It's a lot of bureaucratic discussion. I mean, the thought that we've got a super committee of 12 people on both sides of the aisle to try and fix a problem that the Congress is supposed to be working on, and if anyone in this room has faith and confidence in that super committee to give us the results we need, I don't know what to say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to frustrate you there. Just a question. Anyone? Gentleman here. Wait for the mic. There it is.
Just philosophically, as an executive, I feel it's this chicken and egg thing. So what do you think comes first? Does growth drive jobs, or do jobs drive growth?
I think in order to drive jobs, we as business leaders have to identify growth opportunities, and then we need to have the process and the courage to invest ahead of the growth curve. And that creates jobs. I think great companies narrowly identify opportunities. Companies get in trouble when they're chasing too many things, and all of a sudden, as a result of all of the activity, they lose sight of what the core opportunity is. And I think those companies that can identify a big idea, have the courage to go after it, invest ahead of the growth curve, and create jobs is the winning solution. And history has shown that great companies pick up market share in financial downturns. And 5 years from now, we will look back on a list of companies that have done extraordinarily well in this environment because they identified white space and had the courage to invest in it.
Do you think a drop in the corporate tax rate would help encourage or not?
I think we need comprehensive tax reform, including a drop in the corporate tax rate. But we need comprehensive tax reform, and I believe tax reform should be linked to job creation.
Okay. Let's get another one. Any more? Lady right there. Yep, that's you. Wait for the mic.
Simon, this is yours.
Oh, thank you.
I was just wondering, in addition to all your grassroots initiatives that you're doing out in the community, what sort of lobbying initiatives Starbucks actually puts on in terms of actual paid lobbyists? Change with all this.
Our lobbying efforts over the years have been quite small, to be honest with you. I don't think we spend, I could be corrected, I don't think we spend $1 million a year in lobbying. The issues that we've been concerned about has been trade. And what I'm concerned about today specifically is the way in which commodity prices across the board, in terms of agricultural commodities, all of which have been at record high prices at once. And when I talk to my suppliers, there's no supply-demand issue. And so there has been financial engineering and financial speculation and derivatives and all kinds of things that have nothing to do with why people should be paying more for food today, especially given the economic environment. So we've invested in that area, but by and large, it's been quite small.
Jen.
It would seem, by what we've heard today, in a room filled with marketers, that corporate social responsibility is at the top of the agenda in terms of the marketing for Starbucks. Is that true? Is that the balance of your marketing agenda? And should other corporations follow suit in terms of how they approach doing things in the community?
Sure. What I would say is that if you ask me one word to describe the Starbucks brand, I would say that everything we try and do is through the lens of humanity. Now, we can't invest all of our marketing, promotional, and social and digital media dollars against a social conscience. But I would say that threaded into all of our activities is the understanding and the adjacencies that we stand for something beyond making a singular profit. And it starts with the culture and values of the company. I will say I feel very strongly that everyone in this room, including Starbucks, has competition, and there is parity in the marketplace. And those businesses that are able to define themselves, that have authentic, genuine, and are value-based, and their people believe it, are the companies that are going to win.
I read a quote from Henry Ford, and I'm going to paraphrase it now, but he said he wanted to have his business to produce enough products per person so that you could pay the highest wages possible. That's not a sentiment that I often hear from CEOs. Is that something you agree with? You want to be able, you want to and still make a profit. Is that something you buy?
I would say that we want to provide a total pay package to our people that is best of class. And we believe that if we do that, we will make more money.
Great. Next person, gentleman there. That's right. There he is.
This will be our final question.
Hi, Howard. Suchit Majumdar, Charming Charlie. You mentioned a few different things today that seem to be really intertwined. One was corporate social responsibility. The other was the opportunity in the economy to invest in health and wellness. Another was education. And one thing that kind of is at the heart of the Starbucks business model is selling drinks and food that may not necessarily be that nutritionally, reduced calorie muffin for 400 calories, a large latte or whatever. Sure. How do you think about balancing the need for education, health and wellness, and CSR in the context of selling, in some cases, stuff that isn't terribly healthy?
I think that we have a responsibility to fulfill the different need states that our customers have at any point during the day. And I think we've learned over a 40-year history that indulgent products at many different times of our customers' day is what they want. However, we have to have a balanced approach to the food and beverage that we're selling and merchandising. And we also have an obligation to educate and inform our customers about nutrition. And I would say if you go back to Simon's one of his earlier questions, what's in the future, I think that one of the significant areas of growth and development and refinement of the Starbucks strategy will be a big push into healthier alternatives while we still have indulgent products in our stores.
I know that was supposed to be the last question, but I'm going to cheat.
Sure.
You said you were the most optimistic person any of us knew, So say something inspiring that will leave us all leaving here tonight optimistic. I'm optimistic that there's going to be a drink waiting for me downstairs later, but something bigger.
Okay, I strongly believe that despite the fact that the Yankees have the worst pitcher in the American League pitching tonight, the Yankees will win.
Nice, yes. Thank you very much.